There's a pulley right against the lens.
Oh my God, mate, I feel like I've got to get out of this chair.
He's got the pink, he's on the pink, he's on the pink!
Something that we have been asked countless times to do is film where you can see anglers fishing in the silt and in the weed.
Right, so my opening rig is my ever faithful hinge rig. He's a chunk and he's straight in for dinner though, isn't he?
Nige, that is absolutely perfect.
Just gone in with 2 bright pop-ups, 1 yellow, 1 pink, my 2 favourite colours.
Why are you always so calm for?
That's what I am, always am.
There's definitely carp there. I don't think the clarity's good enough here.
Thanks,
Yes!
Cheers, Al.
Stokesy, let's do this, mate. It's tangled round, it's gone up round the line.
Fucking hell. When you are casting in front of those underwater cameras, it is next level accuracy. All of that pellet that I put out last night, probably 5-6 kilo of it, has gone.
Like hooking a fish in a corner where there's weed involved.
Dave, bless him, went out with his scuba gear on.
Turn. A little bit of a
Must
turn
be
now.
able to see it.
Also, the second fish to the pink.
That spot was beautiful before. It's hideous now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's his little dip in the dorsal that we see there.
5 or 6 carp feeding on the pellets round the float.
You know, there was a big carpet of food there.
Mate, that is exactly where you wanted it.
That was an epic battle.
We are reaching a critical stage of the shoot now.
That was
You are about to watch the first in a 7-episode underwater series that sees both Tom Stokes and Nigel Sharp tackle 2 different venues at the same time, with the focus being weed and silt fishing, which is an underwater first. I'm sure you're going to love this collection of films, and if you would like to watch the rest of them and you use the code DIRTYGROUND, all in capitals, when subscribing on our website, we have a little surprise for you. It's fair to say that we have a bucket list of things that we want to do with our underwater projects, and something that we've always wanted to do ourselves, but more importantly, something that we have been asked countless times to do by other people is film an underwater project where you can see anglers fishing in the silt and in the weed. And in this series, that is exactly what you're going to see. We have called upon 2 truly successful big carp anglers in the form of Nigel Sharp and Tom Stokes, and they are going to be fishing 2 different venues on 2 completely different spots at 2 different times, but we've combined them into one series, and I can only hope that this is a series not only that you will enjoy, but a series of underwater films that will open up a world that you have never seen before. Right, this wasn't part of the plan. We're at Thorney for a little look, and as you can see, it's a little bit flooded. I've sacrificed my socks. I've got a spare pair of trainers in the car. I'll get my toes and my trainers wet, and I'll put my spares on. Cool, been fishing for 4 days. They don't smell too good. Well, the water on the path's clear anyway, which is a good sign. Just seen a carp. We've come a long way. This is like the longest walk you can possibly take. It puts us right where you come in. Bit of a weird setup really, but there's a massive tree here obviously. The lake's quite snaggy in general, but this is a known area, and I've just seen a carp swim through. It's really dull, very grey today, quite hard to see, but the clarity is good, and I did clearly see a carp go through, so good sign. Having had what can only be described as a brief look around the lake, one thing is clear: we can make an underwater film here, and that is the important thing, because we seem to be getting a lot of problems lately, but that is part and parcel with it. The important thing is solving those problems and finding another suitable venue, which I believe we have done. So, the position we're in at the minute is the anglers that were supposed to do it are now not doing it. The venue we were supposed to use we're now not using. So I think we've solved the venue problem. Now we need to find an angler. Who that will be, I don't know, but it seems like Thorney Weir will be the next place we make an underwater film at. So that's good. Fingers crossed we can find an angler, and in the next few days or so, we should appear back here with the intention of putting a camera in the water. I feel like a bit of a broken record constantly talking about how big a problem the water clarity can be on these shoots, and the reality of it is that 9 times out of 10, if something goes wrong, it is the clarity that becomes the nail in the coffin. And although Thorney Weir looked great just some time before, arriving back to the lake, once again, it seemed that things had taken very much a turn for the worse. There's definitely carp there. It doesn't look as, it looks murky here, doesn't it? Yeah, it's very murky.
It does seem to get a little bit deeper on the side of the bridge.
I don't think the clarity's good enough here. I really don't.
What, over this side?
No. I don't know. I think the further they come down the channel, the further you come down the channel, the murkier it gets. See them over the back? 3 or 4 of them on the top down there. Look. Yeah.
He could be, that middle one would have a mixer, wouldn't he?
It's cool, isn't it? Look at them.
It's a little smaller when you're looking at them side on,
Yeah.
when you're looking from above.
Big from here.
He'd definitely have a mixer, he would.
After quite some deliberation, we decided to knock Thorney on the head, but on that complex there are 3 lakes, so our next idea was to head over to the Mets. It's a beautiful lake, quite a lot of mystery surrounding that place at one time, and a place that we'd always wanted to film. I'd never even walked around it, so I was keen to do so, but typically, over on this lake, the clarity was gone because they quite literally just started spawning. So that was one problem. We weren't going to fish for spawning fish, of course, and the clarity was steadily dropping as well. So we then began to look at a beautiful little lake right at the back of the complex in the form of Pit 3.
First impressions of this lake, it's obviously not a big lake, it's quite intimate. I don't really know a lot about it. I walked around it years and years ago when there wasn't any fishing on here, and I think there's been a handful of people that had fished it in the past, and I think it gets a little bit of traffic now with anglers, but yeah, it's a nice little intimate little water with obviously weed, big snaggy areas as well. Dave's just give us a brief and a few like features in the lake, so it seems to offer most things you'd want with carp for a carp lake, you know. So, and we found fish as well, so that's always a good bonus. Gets you buzzed up for it. Well, Dave's just give us the heads up on a little plateau that sticks out from the margins down there, so we're going to go and check that out and see whether it's fishable and it's going to work for what we want to do. And it's right in an area where the sun hits first thing in the morning, which is always attractive to carp. Elliot found some fish here earlier before I arrived, and that's quite early in the morning, so they obviously like it here. It seems to be the place, you know, we're mid-May now, so it's that time when you're looking at them morning bite times, so this seems like a sensible option to target this area. It seems like a bit of a nest of carp, so yeah, we'll have a little look and see what we make of it. So next week, underwater filming. Not actually done any of the actual filming before, but any type of carp fishing, the idea is to find the fish, feed them and try and catch them. So we found fish. This looks like an area they like, so I'm obviously a little bit excited to have a go, try and catch fish out of a lake that I've never fished before. Obviously, I'm confident in my own methods everywhere I go. This lake, I would say, is not the sort of lake that's probably got loads of big scrubbed out spots, so that probably suits quite a lot of the rigs I like to use. So we'll offer them in, well, we'll have a look at what the spots are like, but once we know, I'll decide what I'll use, really. So I'm actually quite looking forward to it, but you don't know till you try, do you?
For location number 2, we swapped urban Greater London for the wilds of East Anglia.
If you've been following our underwater adventures lately, then you might remember the Serpentine Lake, which is part of Embryo Angling's portfolio, situated in Peterborough. Now, this place is absolutely crystal clear. We came here some time ago with Oscar Thornton. It wasn't so clear, but we are now back and the water clarity is absolutely incredible. So, you know what's coming next? We need to find a spot, we need to get our camera in position and get everything set and ready for next week. But we've got a massive westerly that's meant to get up to 30 miles an hour and we've got rain. So it's gonna be fun to say the least. We ain't got much choice, so let's get cracking, eh?
So the first I knew about this shoot was when Elle rang me up and asked if I could step in as somebody else unfortunately couldn't make it. We were going to be filming on the Serpentine Lake, which was a lake I was actually familiar with as I'd fished it the year before. for a charity fishing full corder. But unfortunately, I wasn't available when the cameras went in. But knowing the carp had seen relatively little pressure, you know, the lake had only been open to the angling public for about 12 months or so. I'll be honest, I felt pretty confident that we could pull this off.
Having looked at the map, there was quite an obvious bar that ran down the middle of the bowl end of the lake. The lake is quite an interesting shape, so you've got like a long arm at one end, and then at the top end of the lake that opens up into a bowl, and in the centre of that bowl was a clear shallow area. So once out in the boat, the plan was to locate a fishable spot somewhere on top of that bar, and to do that I was using an aquascope, a great piece of kit, looks a bit like a traffic cone, and in the base of it you have a piece of glass. At the top end you've got what effectively acts as an eye mask, and you're able to put that against your face, lean over the side of the boat, and with the glass submerged just into the water, you can see perfectly along the lake bed. And if you're allowed to use a boat somewhere, then an aquascope is a game changer. I haven't had one until recently, but trust me, if you're gonna do any sort of boat fishing, that is a piece of kit that you need, because it makes the job a lot easier. Sometimes putting the camera in position and finding the spots is easy. Sometimes it is quite literally the opposite of that, and this was one of those cases really. The weather was far from on our side, it was windy, it was raining, and the lake was actually much deeper than I kind of thought it would be. The clarity wasn't quite as good looking through it as I thought it would be, and it took me a long time before I really found areas that we could put the camera on and that felt right. But eventually, after a hell of a lot of searching, a lot of drifting back and forth, you know, I did manage to locate a few different spots that looked like they could be the one. Right, so I've dropped the bottle on the spot. If you look beneath now, it should be weedy. That's the edge of the weed there, and then this is all clear. Choosing a spot is never easy, but it's really important, whether you're fishing or whether you're putting a camera on it. You know, there's determining factors, particularly in our case when we're trying to find somewhere to place our camera, certain things that you can get away with in a normal fishing situation you just can't when you're doing an underwater film. We found one area in particular that was really nice out in the middle of the lake, but the problem with that was the spot was big, but it had a big slope on it, which isn't good for putting the camera on, and at the base of the spot it felt quite soft, almost like clay. Now, with that in mind, if it murks up, we're in big trouble. So we left that one and then found another spot further towards the other side of the lake. Now, the only one problem with that was, although it was a lovely spot, gravelly and in a good position, it felt a bit up the other end. You know, this is quite a long lake, and unless they're in that corner, it just didn't feel the one for traffic. So as per Tom's request, I went back out in the boat and managed to find a spot close to the point. Now, the good thing about the point is it's a great interception point, whether they're going into the bay round to the left, coming through the channel, or going out into open water, they've got to come past the point. And I don't know, maybe 8-9 wraps out, something like that, found a lovely gravel area. The best looking spot for sure, and in what felt like a good position, but more importantly, in an area that Tom really fancied.
So what I knew about the lake is it was around 6 to 8 acres in size. I might be wrong there. There's a stock of around 120 carp, handful of 30s, most of them being 20s. They hadn't, I'm not sure how long they'd been in the lake, but they hadn't been in there particularly long. It had been stocked a few years before, and it had only been open to angling for around about 12 months or so, which I presumed would mean they would be relatively catchable.
Right, I'll tell you what, I am absolutely buzzing with this. Whilst I was out in the boat, Dave's going, the spot is sick, the spot is sick. And he's right. Really cool area that. It's got a bit of weed on it, a bit of gravel, a bit of sand, you know, a bit of all sorts. We're trying to stray away from just gravel and bring a few other things into the mix, and this is absolutely perfect. Okay, gave the camera a little tweak, just so it's facing onto the spot better. But we're now really happy with it. So last job is put some bait in. These are highly nutritional pellets which these fish on this complex have been fed with over the years. So I'm going to put a lot of bait out. A lot of bait out. Now there is probably, I don't know, 10, 15 kilos of pellets there. I'm going to put the whole lot in. Shit or bust. Let's do this. Putting the bait out was supposed to be an easy task with the aid of a boat. Now, it wasn't. It really wasn't. And throwing the pellets into the water next to the camera, a lot of the time they weren't landing in front of screen. So one thing that I have just learned, or certainly one thing that I have just experienced for the first time really, is bait falling and not landing in front of the camera when I'm the one putting the bait in, you know. I've thrown bait in expecting it to drop in front of the camera and it was just disappearing out of shot. So the undertow, obviously we've got a big wind today, but the undertow certainly played its part, and I put a lot of bait out, but in the back of my mind I'm kind of thinking that a lot of it didn't land on the spot. You can see there's plenty of pellet on the spot, but if you are to consider how much bait I actually put out, you know, a lot of it must have landed in and around and in the weeds. So it's not the end of the world, you know, we just want fish in the area. They don't have to feed right on top of the spot all the time, but certainly something to consider. Undertow does affect your bait. Right, that is us done and dusted. I'm absolutely soaked. I've got a welly full of water and pellet juice, which ain't very nice. It's not been a good day to put the camera in. We had that fear when we got here, but the camera is in, our spot is baited, and we are ready to rumble. And we're not coming back until Sunday. Won't start fishing until Monday. Today is Tuesday, so that's got the best part of 7 days. Now, that might have seemed like a lot of bait that I've just put out, but this time of year, and especially on a lake like this where you've got lots of carp, you know, I'm not scared to put 30, 40 kilo hits of food in. And we've probably put 15 kilo pellet in, something like that. So it looked a lot, and it is a lot, but I would like to think on a lake like this with lots of hungry carp, that'll get eaten. If we turn back up next week and the bait is still there, we'll have to worry. But until then, fingers will be crossed as always, and I'm sure when we come back and turn the camera on, that bait will be gone. We are back at Serpentine Lake, and behind me is Tom Stokes, and it is going to be Tom that is fishing in front of the underwater camera this week. Now, we baited the spot 5 days ago with roughly 15 kilos of trout pellets, which is a lot of bait, but there's lots of hungry carp in here, and hopefully all that bait is now gone. As you can see, Tom was already set up, but we have learned from past experience that before we set all of our stuff up, we need to turn the camera on and have a look at the spot, because if all that bait is still sat there, we're in big trouble and we're going to have to start again, move the camera and all that malarkey. But collectively, we are all confident they will have eaten the bait, and in a couple of minutes time, we're going to find out. Right, let's have a look what we got. Oh wow, I'm saying it's not gone.
Can I have a look?
It's definitely not gone. It's not gone, mate, is it?
No, it don't look great at all. Let's have a look.
That spot was beautiful before. It's hideous now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like even the weed looks like it's going rank. Done it?
It's not gone. Another one just showed over there.
Did it? That's free now. We ain't even been looking. It looks dirtier than when
Let's
you
move the
started.
camera. I've got another spot bottled, and we said this, if it doesn't go, we'll put it over there. We've got no choice.
Ain't there anything closer to that swim? Like,
Yeah, you can go all along the reeds is clear.
the spot ain't got, if you're just going to boilie fish as well, the spot ain't got to be as clear, surely.
It's all clear as a whistle, but yeah.
Like, it's not like it's got to be like spank gravel, because it's not like they're going to be.
No, but there is a nice gravel spot out there, which they were showing around when we left.
Yeah.
And then you also got the reeds option.
So of course that is a bit of a blow. I had high hopes for this area. It obviously isn't going to be the one. I did speak to Al when he was putting the camera in, and I did suggest that this was probably going to be a good area. You know, it's middle of the pond, good interception point, but it obviously isn't. You know, for whatever reason, the carp haven't fed on it. I did get here a little bit earlier than these boys. I got here about 3 o'clock this afternoon, and I have seen a few off the reeds on the far bank where the wind is blowing. The wind is cold, but for whatever reason they want to be over there. El's seen one since as well, and we've actually both seen one since then. So there's obviously carp over there. Speaking to Ali, reckons the spot's off the reeds. So yeah, not the end of the world. We've got the rest of the afternoon. We're gonna have to up sticks, go around there and find a new spot. So of course we needed a change of spot. It was obvious that that first spot that had been baited was not going to be the one. The decision was made to quickly move all the kit round there. Obviously it's Sunday afternoon now, we are running out of time before dark, but we had enough time to get everything round the other side and hopefully find a spot along that reed line we'd seen them showing. That's that sparse bit of reeds in it where it sticks out of it. I reckon anywhere from the point of there, or slightly right.
When I go out, you want me to favour the right hand side?
Yeah, I reckon so. Even though the fish are more there at the minute, I think you get more traffic.
Like, there's a reason why the reeds are growing.
Yeah, there's obviously a bit of a bar, or I'm assuming there's a bit of a bar or something sticking out. So fair play. I love how he's still got his socks on. They keeping your feet warm, them socks.
I don't know why I left them on, but I purposely bought like 5 pairs of socks just in case.
You reckon you want to tuck that mask in underneath the... So I tuck it in for you?
Yeah.
Yeah, lift your head up a bit.
Oh, what, that mask?
This here, yeah.
No, I'll have to take that off again anyway to splash it with water before I go under. So
Oh, you steam up?
yeah.
Yeah. You look the part anyway, mate. Scuba Dave.
That is cold.
You was telling me it was like bath water earlier. I said it's cold over there on the end of the wind. You was like, yeah, but it's like bath water. Unfortunately, again, once we got round there, you know, on closer inspection, we tried dropping the camera onto a couple of different areas along those reeds. Dave, bless him, went out with his scuba gear on and, dived down, tried to put the camera in by hand, but the spots just weren't good enough. Although they looked good from the boat and although they'd have been good in a normal fishing situation, they were just too dirty to place the underwater camera on. So, you know, with literally maybe an hour left of light, we had to settle for the spot which Elle was initially going to put the camera on anyway, which was a gravel spot out in the middle. That did make me feel a little bit guilty because obviously I'd suggested putting it in the other swim off the point, and we'd basically ended up falling back on what was going to be the spot that Elle suggested initially. By the time the camera was in, we literally had minutes of light left to get the rigs in position, which was a pretty stressful series of events.
Nothing.
So, which way is the camera facing?
That's what we don't know.
I don't know, but if I had to guess, I'd lay slightly towards that other corner.
With nerves fraying and tempers flaring, Stokesy had to call on all of his experience to get a rod into position before darkness shut us out.
This should be good. That's on gravel.
Yeah, that's 3 foot in front.
With minutes to spare, we finally had a lead in place and Elliot headed out to fine tune the position of the camera. At this point, it was as good as we were going to get.
So the next morning, we switched the cameras on and unfortunately, it didn't look great. With these underwater shoots, you always hope that you're going to turn that camera on in the morning and the spot is absolutely smashed or there's carp there already feeding. That is the ideal scenario. And unfortunately, we didn't have that. All the boilies were still there. We did sort of question as to whether a couple may have gone. There were a few rudd about, but other than carp, there's nothing else really in that lake that's going to eat boilies. And I think we were really sort of clutching at straws, sort of thinking that maybe a few boilies had gone. The rigs went out there pretty well from memory, but that was probably the highlight of that morning because not a lot else happened. So this is the first rig that's going out there. It's a spinner with a 4.5-inch boom, tied with 20-pound boom. I've got a new prototype hook on there that's sort of a long shank with a wider gape and a straight point. Hook bait wise, I've got a 12mm bottom bait, tipped with a bit of pop-up pink plastic. That's fished on a D-rig kicker to obviously create a D on the back of the hook. I've got a shot on the hook there to help pull the point down. It's fished on a lead clip and it's tied directly to 15-pound contour mainline. So that is the first rig, bottom bait rig. Right, first rig going in, this is the bottom bait.
Yes, mate, it's in shot, Tom, but it's landed. It's not landed well, mate. I say it's not landed well. It's actually coming towards me, isn't it? That's the issue. It's actually coming towards me, the rig, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's here, mate. Look. So you got the lead. I think it's just fallen alongside the lead there.
Yeah. I think that's good.
Yeah.
It's out like that.
I was kind of expecting it to come in from the side, like
Yeah.
But
Mate, that's bang on.
Yeah.
That's fucking bang on. Proud of myself there, boys.
With one rod now on the spot, yesterday's difficulties seemed to fade, and we were keen to get another rig in position before the fish turned up.
it's right at the back of the spot, Stokesy, just up against the weed. Come and have a look. Come on then, Stokesy.
Let's have a look.
What do you reckon, pal?
Mate, I'm proud of them. I think they're bang on. That pop-up looks mega, like the lead is only just into the spot in it. But obviously both rigs are sat pretty much directly at the camera, but you can see like they're both pushed out. You can see the hook bait on that one.
What do you think about that little wall of weed, mate, at the back in terms of the way that's going to be?
What, in terms of line lay?
Yeah.
I can't imagine it's great, but it's not super high, and I don't worry how close that lead is. I'm probably more worried about this, with a bit more separation between the weed and the lead. Like there's probably line up in the water there. But I have got two bits of putty sort of 8 inches apart up the line, which should, and the lines are slack, fluorocarbon. This is good. I don't think you can get any better, like, without raking a line lay.
So we wait.
I'm happy with that, mate. I think that if carp come in, I mean, we have seen one this morning, it didn't feed, but if carp come in and feed on that spot, one of them up baits is getting picked up. They look good.
Good, isn't it?
Yeah,
Let's do it here.
Top low.
We just need to get a boat out and have a look. And also, we're out the way here. We now find ourselves over on Lake 3, a beautiful little lake. It's only small. Apparently it's 50 odd carp in here, but fortunately we've seen a lot, and something really important for this kind of filming is that you find an area that the carp like, and we have certainly done that. They're absolutely stacked right in front of a little swim, the last swim on the lake. So a great looking area. Next job is to get out in the boat now, have a look and try and find what will be the spot that we fish. Apparently there's a little plateau down this left-hand margin here, so fingers crossed. I cross my fingers a lot on these shoots, more than any other time, but yeah. Next job is just get out in the boat, have a look, see what we can find. And if we can find a spot to fish on, we're bombs away. Going out in a boat is the best way of finding an area, you know, no need for a marker rod, and in these situations we want to use a boat as much as possible. Dave said there was a plateau out there, or certainly a shallow area, which we really struggled to find. There was a lot of weed. It seemed pretty much the entire lake bed was covered in weed. In the process of looking for the plateau, we'd actually gone over a spot and missed it. So not finding the plateau, we made our way back along the margin and then discovered a very small spot amongst the weed. It certainly wasn't the biggest, but it would do. It was in a great area. And the next job was to get the camera into the boat and then out over the area. I then carefully lowered the camera down into the weed at the front of the spot. So rather than plonk it on the clean area, I dropped it into the weed and then using the oar, began to part the weed. And because it's this duckweed stuff, it just swept off the spot with the oar. It wasn't rooted. There were little bits of rooted weed, but most of it just swept away. And although the spot completely coloured up, we're now waiting for the spot to clear. And I'm sure once it does, we're gonna have a lovely little clearing amongst the weed with a few sparse bits of weed amongst it. So very different kind of spot to those that we fished in the past. And that's always good.
All right, so Elliot's been out there and he's cleaned up the spot a bit, and just to make it a bit more presentable, got rid of a few strands of weed and pushed a couple of sticks into the bottom, just so we will get presentation. We drop a rig on it, but we're on Thursday now, so got 3 or 4 days before we return on Monday. So because we can, we're going to put some bait out, or I'm going to put some bait out. I'm thinking like a couple of kilos of boilies, just fish meal ones, krill, and a little bit of pellet around it. don't want to put too much pellet in because I don't want them getting too glued in the bottom feeding. Really, I want to boilie fish this, and the rigs I intend to use sort of suit boilie fishing, so that's how I'm going to approach it. And yeah, we'll put some bait out and see what he looks like when we come back. The worst thing is, if we put too much bait out, come back on Monday and it's still laying there, the old confidence is going to crash on it. So I've sprinkled some in, Elliot, and tell me if you see them.
I'll see him, mate. As long as you put them on that spot, I'll see him.
Okay, I'll put them on the spot then.
It's quite big, isn't it? It's 4 foot round.
Yeah.
Anywhere on there, mate.
See them?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's where you want your rig to go. Wow,
Yeah.
they drop into the silt a little bit, like, yeah.
It's actually bigger than you think, isn't it?
Yeah, I've made it quite big. It's at least twice the size. Oh, they bury into the silt. It's epic. It's really interesting. The bait just disappears into the silt. You always imagine your boilies just sit on top, but when really we should know they don't, and they're certainly not. Some of this bait just hits the silt and just drops in slightly. What I was looking at here is a perfect example of why doing these films is so interesting and why it's so important to keep trying to do new things. I should probably have known, we should all know really, that bait's going to drop down into the silt, but unless you fished a really clear lake with a boat and actually dropped it down and watched it happen, which I never have, you always just assume that your boilies will sit proud and you'll see them, and that wasn't happening here. You know, they were really burying into the floor. As Nige added more and more bait to the spot, of course, the bait became more visible, but those first few handfuls, they dropped down and they were like 3/4 submerged in the ground. By the time he was finished, you know, there was a big carpet of food there, and that was the idea. Bait heavy, leave the lake for a few days and come back. In the meantime, we were all hoping that fish would come in and have a free meal and want to visit the spot again, looking for more food. Right, this is a good moment now because there were times when I didn't think this shoot was going to happen. A lot has gone wrong along the way, but we are now in what feels like a very good position. The spot is baited, we are set, we are ready. All we need now is for the carp to turn up and eat the bait. Are they going to eat it, Nige?
I think they will.
I hope they do. I hope they do.
I mean, it looks a bit horrendous down there at the moment, but there's quite a few fish in this corner earlier. There's numbers, isn't they? And if they turn up in numbers, they ain't going to last long, is it?
No, they're going to eat it.
While Elliot and Nige were full of expectancy, the same couldn't be said for Tom, who looked like a man with the weight of the world on his shoulders.
I'm starting to have doubts about this spot. Don't get me wrong, it does look like a nice spot. It's in a nice area of the lake, sort of out in the middle, but we've only seen 2 carp come past all morning. They did both have a look, but neither of them fed. And to be honest, it just seems very quiet out in front of us now. I mean, to be honest, we haven't been looking a lot because we have been sat in the tent, but we've not heard anything, and the time I have spent out here looking, I've not seen anything. The weather's far from ideal at the minute. The wind is still sort of cutting into here, but it's not blowing directly into here like it was when we got here. I think that's why the fish were here. And the fish we did see were right in close here to the right. But in the end, we were sort of forced into fishing this spot. The area we'd have liked to have fished over there by the reeds where we were seeing carp just wasn't clean enough. We spent probably an hour and a half at least out there in the boat trying to find a spot and place the camera, and just nowhere felt like the one. Elliot knew that this spot was out here in the middle, knew it was clean gravel, and we were losing the light rapidly, so in the end it was our only option to drop the camera on that spot. And like I say, it does look like a good spot, but without the fish being here, we're never going to catch them. The weather does come back in favour of this area on Wednesday. It's going to blow a westerly, much gentler breeze, and it's going to be a little bit warmer, so no doubt fish will come this way then, or I'd like to think they would, but we are well into the week by then. I'm starting to wonder whether we can leave it that long. I am already considering a move. I don't know where yet. I think I might leave Rich watching the camera and go and have a look, because there's going to be a lot of carp somewhere and they ain't here.
Time is always of the essence on an underwater shoot, and the lads were no longer willing to sit in a swim seemingly devoid of carp. And like any good angler, Stokesy had already formulated a backup plan. Dave and Mike broke down submerged camp while Stokesy whipped in the rigs off the spot, wrapped his kit up and headed round to the other side of the lake, to an area he knew from a recent visit.
Right, so we have moved. Now, I've had this swim in mind since we got here, because this is a swim that last year when I fished this lake on a charity event, so I've actually been here before, and Dan was in this swim with a guy and they did really well. Not only did they do really well, they caught quite a lot of carp in the days, whereas everywhere else around the lake was more so night bites. Now obviously we are seeing the odd carp up there, but not a lot. We're not getting a lot of traffic. I feel like we were forced into fishing that spot because we were running out of time yesterday, and something was just telling me it wasn't the one. Anyway, one of the venue regulars, Bill the golfer, he's fishing over on the big lake, and I actually bumped into him earlier, and straight away as soon as I spoke to him, he said about this swim as well. He said that swim we were in, they like to show up there, but they can be very difficult to catch up there. Even though carp do get caught up there, for the amount they show in that swim, they don't get caught a lot, whereas even he said that this is a really good, really consistent area. So I decided to come down here in the boat and have a look, and I found 2 mega spots in front, both at sort of comfortable ranges. I think one's about 9-10 wraps, the other's maybe 11-ish wraps, slightly out to the right. I've H-blocked both the spots. They both look really good, but the slightly shorter one, more in front of the swim, has got a fine layer of sediment on it. When I'm donking an 8-ounce lead off it, there's little puffs coming up, whereas the right-hand spot, although it is smaller and slightly further out, it feels a lot firmer. Now, there's no way of guaranteeing that it's going to be perfect and ideal until we actually get that camera in. That's the only way of knowing for definite. But what I'm actually going to do now, although I've got a few H-blocks out there already, I'm going to go out there again with my underwater camera, try and get the H-blocks on all the edges of the spot, like the very edges of the spot, so we've got a visual sort of reference on the surface of where that spot is, because it is quite deep out there. Even with the aquascope, you can't actually see the spot. So we're sort of lowering the camera in blind. So I'm thinking if we can sort of surround the spot with H-blocks, work out where the weed is, it should make lowering that camera easier, because ideally we want to get the boat in the perfect position, lower the camera straight down, and the camera wants to be sat sort of in the weed on the edge of the spot. That's the idea anyway. Sounds easy. In this wind, I promise you it's not going to be, but we're going to have a go anyway.
In Elliot's absence, Stokesy and Dave battled the wind to get the camera dropped onto the new spot. And before long, with just a few choice of words, they were back and looking much happier.
Getting that camera in was not easy, but I am a lot happier with this spot. It is a little bit dirtier than we'd like, but I have donked around on the spot with the 8-ounce lead on the end of the camera, on the end of my little camera, and it doesn't puff up too much. I'm hoping that with just a spreader boilie over the spot, it won't cloud up too much. You know, it's not like having a load of particle on the spot where they're going to be feeding hard to the deck. I'm going to put a catapult spreader boilie over the spot, not too much bait, so hopefully when they're feeding on that, it will not kick up that sediment too much. Just got to clip the rods up now. I've got the H-blocks out there still. The plan is to leave them on the spot to give me a visual marker. I'm going to try and clip up amongst them, and then once I'm happy with the clips, I'm going to go out, remove the H-blocks, and I'm actually going to drop a little Kinder Egg marker just behind where the camera is, which will be just behind the rigs, maybe sort of 6 foot or so behind the rigs, and that will give me a visual marker where to bait to. That will stay out there permanently. It'll be attached to a light lead with 2-pound line, so if a fish does go through it, it is not the end of the world. But like I say, that'll give us a permanent marker of roughly where the camera is and something to bait to with the catapult. So that's the plan.
That's bang middle and bang middle, I would say.
Bang middle and bang middle. Yeah. So that's bang middle.
Yeah, middle, and it's sort of 6
Oh
inches
yeah, lovely. So we could maybe squeeze one slightly here. It's a shame, we almost could have done, we just pan it slightly that way, but I don't think we can be too fussy at this stage.
It's too hard, mate, isn't it? It's literally,
Yeah.
It is that hard.
If we can get the other rig in here, I feel like that's decent.
Yeah.
Encouraged by our progress, Stokesy set about clipping his rods to the new area, and almost from the off, it looked like he was hitting his groove.
Mate, that is exactly where you wanted it.
Yeah, sound
Yeah.
it. Sound. We're fishing. Just got to wrap that up.
As a gentle Cambridgeshire evening drew in, Stokesy headed out to give the spots a hit of bait, ahead of what we'd hoped would be a day to finally change our fortunes on this shoot.
Right, so that's it. The rods are all clipped up now. The spot's baited. Just had a lovely barbecue. Not going to bother putting the rods out this evening, even though we have probably got an hour and a half of decent light left. It's just not worth it. Plan is, you know, to leave that bait on the spot all night. Hopefully fish visit it throughout the hours of darkness, and we are going to get up early and get the rods out first thing. I am soaking wet, so I'm going to go back to the van now, change the trousers, and we shall see you in the morning.
Oh my God. Stokesy, let's do this, mate.
Let's do it.
We could go somewhere with this and eventually catch fish on camera.
That's a different fish, Nige. That is a different carp.
That is a mint fish, that, isn't it?
All of that pellet that I put out last night, probably 5-6 kilo of it, has gone.
He's coming back, mate. We could be in trouble here. Because I haven't got a clue where that bait is.
When you are casting in front of those underwater cameras, it is next level accuracy.
In L-top.
He's a chunk, and he's straight in for dinner though, isn't he?
Oh, Tom.
Just gone in with 2 bright pop-ups, 1 yellow, 1 pink, my 2 favourite colours.
Unfortunately, he's sitting up off the lead like a lamppost. Oh, he's treed it.
And lo and behold, there are 5 or 6 carp feeding on the pellets around the float.
Looks good, Nige.
We are reaching a critical stage of the shoot now. Another carp's just showing behind me.
Right on the leader
Likes
again.
it there, doesn't he?
Yeah.
It's like a missile just wedged into the bottom,
Yeah.
innit? But you'd never know that.
I haven't carpet bombed it like we did the other day because we're here to catch them now, we're not here to feed them.
Look at that fizz coming out of the silt, Nige. Turn. A little bit of
Must
turn
be
now.
able to see it.